So Julian Assange, I want to talk about Julian Assange. Right. So now it's such a clear-cut case that even a tool like Chris Hayes gets it right. Ready?
This is, to put it bluntly, wrong, unconstitutional, and downright tyrannical.
So it's wrong, unconstitutional, downright tyrannical. He was allowed to say that at MSNBC. That's how bad it is, right? And now this guy, Jim Acosta. Now, you know who Jim Acosta is. He got famous because he said a lot of bullshit. Well, he stands up to the president, but in very theatrical ways. Like, he's this guy.
A rude, terrible person.
Are you worried?
That's enough. That's
Mr.
enough.
President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person.
So that's Jim Acosta. The Trump year, he won't. So here, and wouldn't it be great if Jim Acosta went after George Bush over the Iraq War, the way he goes after Donald Trump over Stormy Daniels? That's a good point and a good joke, right, Aaron? I took to you for that.
It's a great point and a great joke.
Thank you. All right, so here is Jim Acosta. Like, here's the kind of shit he does, where he tries to paint himself as a victim. And he says, just a sample of the sad scene we faced at the Trump rally in Tampa. I'm very worried that the hostility whipped up by Trump and some in conservative media will result in somebody getting hurt. We should not treat our fellow Americans this way. The press is not the enemy. No, the press isn't the enemy, but the corporate news certainly is fucking the enemy. And then and here's the video. He has a video of Trump supporters. So the guy's fucked the media. And he's acting like it's just Trump. I remember in 2016 when they were getting the CNN sucks at Bernie rallies, right? So it's not the right wing, it's not it's fucking everybody hates the corporate media, okay? Everybody gets it. And he's trying to pretend like it's just Trumpers, and it's this new thing that Trumpers don't like the media. And you know how he's such a bullshitter and he's so full of it? Because the guy who actually went to one of those rallies, who was there with Jim Acosta, was working for Fox 13, and he said Trump supporters can boo and say forever that they hate CNN and Jim Acosta. But after the cameras are off, all I see is them asking his opinion on everything under the sun and if they can take pictures with him. It's quite a phenomenon, and he handles it like a pro. So, Aaron, what does that tell you about Jim Acosta?
Well, he's in it to sell his memoir. He wrote some book recently, like about the courage to speak the truth.
Yeah.
But of course, to speak a very tiny spectrum of truth within what he's allowed to say in permissible, corporate media. And we saw this dynamic this week with the attacks on Bernie Sanders for pointing out that the Washington Post does the bidding of Jeff Bezos and that they don't go beyond. And so everybody freaked out. They can't handle being told that they serve their corporate overlords and they serve the interests of their bosses. And Bernie Sanders was likened to Trump and his attacks on the media. Well, no, Bernie Sanders was describing how the media operates. And the media can't handle that. Instead, they want to make criticism and their job a performance. It's all about theatrics. It's all about writing best-selling books and having moments like Acosta had there with Trump. And in terms of holding people people in power to account, when you point out that they don't do that, they freak out.
Yeah.
And when someone like Julian Assange does that and gets punished for it, they throw him under the bus.
Yeah. Here's what Michael Tracy says. It would be easier to defend Jim Acosta's right to access people in power if he produced something of value, such as a genuine adversarial journalism rather than infantile TV brawl entertainment. Jim Acosta asks unintelligent questions but happens to annoy Trump, so has been anointed a journalistic hero by idiots. Jim Acosta is noxious because he's caused large sections of the public to equate genuine adversarial journalism, good, with pointless theatrical crap, bad. Asking questions aggressively and even rudely without exhibiting respect for the person you're questioning is 100% legitimate when done correctly. See UK's Jeremy Paxman. But that's not what Acosta does. He's pantomiming journalism to create sound bites for entertainment purposes. You would agree with that as an award-winning journalist?
I certainly do. I certainly do.
Okay, all right.
You know what's weird, Jimmy? In a way, we'd almost be better off with the guy who was baiting Cuomo as a journalist.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's got more balls. Like, he's at least, going for it, in a way that these guys never would.
I would love to see that guy host a news show. No, I really thought your name was Warmonger. That's what I thought it was. I thought your middle name was Fuck the Poor. I thought it was Fuck the Poor. No, you seem nicer, though, in person. So here's Jim Acosta hawking his book at the Newseum. The Newseum, which, I don't know if you know, is dedicated to the First Amendment and freedom of speech and freedom of the press. So here he is at the Newseum, and our friend Matt Orfala, who put together that opening video that opened the show for me, he decided to ask Jim Acosta some questions about Julian Assange being prosecuted with the Espionage Act, right? Which is bullshit. It's bullshit. Right, so watch this, and watch how he does it.
And you have your video camera there, so this is going to be a doozy.
Well, we'll see.
That's another way of saying, please don't ask me a hard question.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, just before your book came out, something happened that the Washington Post, the New York Times, and many Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists have recognized as an existential threat to the free press. What are your thoughts on the Trump administration's use of the controversial Espionage Act to indict the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange for publishing classified information in the early 2010s that exposed war crimes, informed the public, and didn't harm anyone?
Now remember, this is him promoting his book about speaking truth to power and freedom of speech at the Newseum, and watch how long he doesn't answer the question. Watch this.
I appreciate that question. I'm probably not going to give you a satisfactory answer, but I'm going to do the best that I
Okay, that's probably the most accurate reporting he's ever done in his life.
can. I've been asked this question before.
Who gives a shit? Well, you should have an answer for it then, right? Exactly. You were asked it before, and you're still out. Hey, why don't you turn the question back on the guy asking it?
Get from your question and your enthusiasm that you may be a Julian Assange supporter or a WikiLeaks supporter.
Who gives a shit? You know how much that matters, Jim? Fucking zero. That's how much that matters.
Perhaps that's not the case. Maybe you're just asking the question. I don't know.
In general, I support anybody speaking truth to power.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I do think, and forgive me if you don't agree with me on this, but I do think what happened with us and my press pass case is slightly different than what happened with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And I can try to talk about that for a few moments, but I don't want to drag it on out forever and ever, and then everybody else doesn't get a chance to get their questions asked. But I'll do the best that I can. My understanding about the Julian Assange situation is that, he is being charged not just for trying to speak truth to power and trying to reveal things. He is in trouble for other things. And, what we've seen during the 2016...
So he's just a flat-out bullshit. He's just lying, right? Would you say he's just lying, or do you think he actually doesn't know? What do you think
Well, I don't think he cares. I think he has a deep spiritual void where he is filling it with being subservient to power his whole life. And someone like Julian Assange, who represents the exact opposite, who's doing his job and trying to expose the secrets of the powerful, hold them to account, he comes along, so Assange is like a mortal enemy. So I don't think Acosta cares, but he just the brain goes, must attack Assange, must throw him under the bus. And that's just what he follows. He won't give a straight answer.
And to be fair, he prefaced it with, I'm about to spew bullshit. Right, so he covered his bases.
Campaign where there were contacts between WikiLeaks and Russian operatives.
The charges have nothing to do with that. He knows that, right? You think for a second Jim Acosta doesn't know that the charges against Julian Assange have nothing to do with Russia?
Well, he might believe it. That's the point. If you're in that position, you're so malleable and so cynical and so self-interested, you can believe anything. That's why he's there. So he very well might believe that.
that, I think, takes WikiLeaks and Julian Assange into sort of a different category than just a straight news organization, straight publisher of news around the world. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not rendering a verdict on Julian Assange. I think he should have his day in court. I think we should see what the facts are.
He shouldn't be in court. He shouldn't be in court. Why are you even leave that as a possibility?
Can you imagine if Trump was prosecuting Jim Acosta for revealing a secret?
He should have his day in court.
He should have it. Jim Acosta.
Yeah. That's our stance.
And let a court let that process play out. I do think that there is a value in whistleblowers, no question about it. And
but I'm never going to do it. Trust me.
I do think that there is a value in people inside the government dealing with journalists to shine a light on government secrets. No question about it. I mean, during the writing of this book, you can imagine how there are Trump folks who were deeply fearful of speaking on the record with me. I only got a couple of folks to speak on the record with me. Most of them wanted to speak on background. I talked to a national security.
He's literally found a way to plug his own fucking book. Instead of answering the question, should Julian Assange be prosecuted with the Espionage Act? He'll talk about everything else. He'll plug his own book, but he won't answer the goddamn question.
Official with the Trump administration who told me that he didn't know whether or not President Trump was pursuing U.S. interests and was concerned about some of the things that he was doing in terms of his dealings with Vladimir Putin.
What does that mean,
this
U.S.
official
interests? What does he mean? Was he talking U.S. interests? What is he talking about?
You tell me. I don't know.
He would not be able to talk about those kinds of things on the record. He would be in a lot of trouble. But we need that kind of information. And so I do understand what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, what the spirit of what they were trying to do, but I can't sit here and endorse everything that they've done and the tactics that they've used to go about presenting the information that they gather to the world. And I hope you can...
Not asking you to endorse everything he's done. We're asking he should be prosecuted by the Espionage Act. That's a direct question, and you're not answering it.
Appreciate where I'm coming from on that. That's really all I have to say on the topic.
But I'm specifically asking, thank you for your response.
I'm trying to be as thoughtful as I can.
But specifically, I asked about the indictments under the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
Not allegations of Russian.
Obviously, the Espionage Act.
Which the Mueller
obviously
report,
federal laws should not be abused to punish journalists and punish publishers of information. But I can't on the fly here interpret what is going on in the Julian Assange case and give you a satisfaction.
You on the fly? You just wrote a goddamn book. Yes! About journalism and speaking truth to power, and the most important case in our generation is Julian Assange. Since Daniel Ellsberg, it's Julian Assange, and you don't want to answer it on the fly? Well, the fact that you don't have the information to answer it right now means you're an incompetent fuck. And you know how I know that CNN's star reporter is an incompetent fuck, and because he can't answer that question? Because me, who already smoked pot twice today, can answer that fucking question. I know the answer to that question. I know what it means. I don't have to pretend it's on the fly.
It's so weird to watch a fake journalist being given an opportunity to be an actual journalist, and how he has to respond to get himself out of it.
Yes.
To wiggle himself out of it. It's fascinating.
It's upsetting to see a journalist lie or be evasive in any situation, but to see it at the Newseum is really, it adds another layer, I mean, at the Newseum of all places, that's...
Answer that's going to make you feel as though I'm siding with him.
Just what do you think? Should journalists or be put in prison for publishing classified information? That's the question. Just for publishing classified information. That's the question. That was the question.
Let me think about that. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
After the
He has to think about it. Jim Acosta has to think about that question. What does that tell you, that a guy has to think about that question, Aaron?
That he is an indoctrinated servant of the system, and in that moment he can't think of a slimy enough answer to deflect properly. So he's just like, I got to take a rain check. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you.
I'm trying to sell books up here.
Yeah.
Acosta continued to speak with members of the audience on stage. I waited behind the last person had spoken to him before asking again for a solid answer.
Just a quick follow-up, Jim.
No, sorry.
My man, I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Sorry.
Should journalists be jailed for publishing classified
You
information?
cannot come back here, sir. I'm sorry.
I can't do it.
As I waited in line to get my book signed, security pulled... me out of the line because they were concerned I would ask a question.
Think about the irony involved here.
There's some concern that you may not have a book to sign, and they believe that you may ask questions.
Let me have a what?
They believe that you might be asking a question of a journalist in the Newseum dedicated to journalism and freedom of speech. And they're afraid you might do that thing we're dedicated to. Are you going to do that thing we're dedicated to? You're going to do journalism? No, you promise you're not going to? How can I be sure? Can you show me your Washington Post press pass? Crowd didn't get that joke last night. Thank you so much for getting that joke. Remember that? That hurt.
All right.
You don't have a book to sign?
Oh, I do. No, absolutely do. Absolutely do.
But they're not taking any questions. That's what they're...
I understand. I have a book to get signed.
The journalist isn't taking any questions. The journalist who wrote the book on the First Amendment, no. The journalist who's here to talk about free speech wants you to shut it.
I'm gonna get the book signed.
I'm just advising you. That's all.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Banner,
I appreciate it.
The board.
You got a book. At least you bought a book.
Thanks for doing it.
Fill it out to Grandma Rose.
Grandma.
CNN.
So he has him sign it to Grandma Rose, because those are the only people who still watch CNN, ladies and gentlemen.
You know, we talked about this last night, but we thought he should get it subscribed to Julian Assange.
Yeah, he should have him right. Yeah.
Maybe Grandma Rose is Assange's CIA name, like his, right?
And I'm not going to hound you, but like, I think you really should look into the espionage charges specifically against Assange, because it's for publishing, obtaining and publishing classified information, and it has anything to do with Russia.
I'll take a look at it, but thank you. I gotta.
Please do.
Thank you so much for coming.
I'll take a look at it, I guess. I don't know. It's only the most important journalism story in my lifetime. I guess I'll take a look at it. Whatever. I gotta sell some books. Get the fuck away from me.
The whole thing is, as that guy was talking, he was like, he already bought a book.
After Acosta was done signing books, I asked him again if he was okay.
I love Matt Orfala. Here we go.
With jailing journalists for publishing the truth.
I'm now meeting.
Hey, Jim. No. Can we?
I know, but I'm now
So we're
meeting with some students
Hey, guys.
from Chicago, so I can't.
Yeah, let's take a picture. He already answered your question, and it's just rude. You're just yelling, and it's rude.
You are a rude, terrible person.
That's enough. That's enough. I think that's
You're a very rude person.
And it's rude. Please.
Jim Acosta, hi. You guys with the University of Chicago?
Hey, they want to escort you out of the building now. He wants to escort you out of the building.
Please share this video and tell Jim Acosta on Twitter that if he really wants to fight for the truth, hold Trump accountable, and preserve the First Amendment, he needs to call out and challenge President Trump on his administration's unprecedented attack on truth, government accountability, and the First Amendment, with its use of the Espionage Act to prosecute Julian Assange for practicing journalism.
So that was great work by Matt Orfala, ladies and gentlemen. That was great work. And it just goes to show you it's not that hard to expose a tool like Jim Acosta, even though he's wearing a $10,000 suit, and he's got the power of CNN, which is now AT&T behind him. It's very easy to expose these cocksuckers because guys like Matt can do it, and guys like me can do it. And anything? Go ahead. Anything?
Oh, it's just, you get so far away from the actual war crimes that Assange exposed, and just today I stubbed my toe, and whenever anything happens to me, I howl and carry on, and you think about that compared to what happens with a war. And we have various things in New York called Stop the Chop, with the helicopters that mostly the rich people use to ferry themselves. And whenever they're around, I think about, for some reason I think about Vietnam. I guess I'm in the arts, I have a pretty good imagination. When I'm in the shower, sometimes I imagine it's napalm. I mean, maybe some other people have this. Like, you start imagining things. And just when I think about the way I react to a paper cut, and you think about a bomb hitting someone, and all of a sudden they don't have an arm, and they just have a bone sticking out, and but we're so far removed from that. And that's just not being dealt with, obviously, by Acosta, or it's all...
That seems like an extreme example.
I love it.
I mean, I don't like rich people in helicopters, but Jesus Christ. It's quite an image, Nelly.
If you lived in Brooklyn or Astoria, you would hate. It's like it's a constant stream, and I love that imagery of Vietnam and napalm.
All right, so you were right. You were right. All right.
The brutality and the terror,
I'm with you.
It's like Chris Hedges. He's got a great quote about it, but we don't see the mothers wailing, and we don't.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
So there's one part of this video I want you to see.
White House correspondent talks as if the indictment against Assange has to do with Russia and the 2016 election may explain why so many Americans are misinformed about the Assange case. Interestingly enough, the same material Assange is actually being prosecuted for publishing is memorialized inside the very same building we were in. WikiLeaks released the material in 2010, revealing secrets about the Iraq and Afghanistan wars in much the same way the Pentagon Papers revealed embarrassing government secrets about the Vietnam War. Another common misconception about the Assange case is the false assumption that Assange would receive a fair trial if extradited to the U.S.
I think he should have his day in court. I think we should see what the facts are, see what they're presented, and let a court let that process play out.
However, in recent Espionage Act cases, prosecutors have convinced courts that the intent of the leaker, the value of the leaks to the public, and the lack of harm caused by the leaks are irrelevant and therefore inadmissible in court. So even though the information was in the public's interest to know, and even though no individual was physically harmed as a result of the publications, just the fact that Assange published information that the government wanted to keep secret to avoid embarrassment and accountability may be enough to send him to jail for life under the Espionage Act. That would set a dangerous precedent, effectively making it a crime for any journalist to expose government secrets.
So I just wanted to show you that other part. I just wanted to show you that other part of the map.
And Jimmy, can I just say that thing I said yesterday too?
Yeah.
Do you mind? It's just that thing of no one was harmed as a result of the WikiLeaks, but that's not your responsibility. They always say this. If you expose something about the government, about the military, if you expose something about animal experiments, factory farms, if you expose corporate malfeasance, someone may see that information and be outraged, and they may go after the people who are hurting others. You still have a responsibility to get the truth out there and to expose the horrors that are going on.
Yeah. I'm with you.
I wanted to say, if you watch the Mueller hearings, the recent testimony of Robert Mueller, to me there were two interesting things to come out of it, because so much of it was just underscoring what a baseless thing this whole thing was. But it showed us two things. One, it showed us that Robert Mueller was clueless about his own investigation, so that was interesting to learn. But the second thing we learned is that Mueller was asked by somebody whether he agreed with Mike Pompeo calling WikiLeaks a hostile intelligence service. And Robert Mueller said, absolutely, yes. And to me, that crystallized so much of what Trump-era resistance has been ultimately about. It's been repackaging a neocon outlook of the world in a liberal guise and putting our faith in people like Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller, who agrees with Mike Pompeo that Julian Assange is a hostile, foreign enemy. And it symbolized to me the drift to the right that we've undergone, that even our supposed liberal hero, Mueller, who was going to save everybody from Trump, that he basically endorses the most radical framework, outlook of Trump's administration.
Well said.
Every time I listen to Aaron talk right now, I just think he's so smart, and he's got great skin. Really good complexion. An award-winning complexion.
Happy anniversary.
They can't take that away from you.
Hey, if you want to fucking get a divorce, we'll do it right now.
Why would you say that?
She doesn't like real journalists. Anyway. They're creepy. Anyway. They're always asking questions. They don't care what you think about them. What the fuck's wrong with those people?
I'm still shocked anybody wants to buy Jim Acosta's book.
No shit. Who buys that book?
They were asking for him to sign it. Speaking of that, Jimmy has a book.
Imagine you could read and you spend your reading powers on Jim Acosta's book. And that's how dumb people, I refer to them as reading powers. Hey, come see a live Jimmy Dore show. We're going to be in Tempe, Arizona, Sacramento, San Jose, Miami. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets to all of our live shows. And go to jimmydorecomedy.com/join to become a premium member. We give you hours of bonus material every week. Thanks for your support.